Hassan Jallow, there were jubilant scenes when President Barrow returned to Gambia earlier this year. Can you describe the mood of the country?
It was a very happy mood in the country. It swept the country, throughout the country. There was a feeling of happiness and relief that finally over 2 decades of very difficult, challenging period for the country had come to an end with an air of freedom and liberation. It was happy, emotional as well for the whole country. It was a country turning a new chapter now, facing the future with greater hopes for respect for the rule of law, for democracy and for human rights.
But President Barrow does face a catalogue of issues which have arisen from 22 years of autocratic rule under President Jammeh. How do you think he's going to face that task?
There are many challenges facing the government at the moment, basically trying to address the abuses of the past. There is a demand by victims for justice, for redress, for reparations, and then face the future as well in terms of trying to put in place a better framework, a political, legal, legislative framework which will ensure and guarantee good government. Already there are indications of how these two matters will be handled. It is expected that before the end of the year, a Truth and Reconciliation Commission would have been established and would start functioning to receive reports, allegations of abuses of the past, investigate them and establish their accuracy or otherwise, and then move forward from there to see what could be dealt with through a process of accountability or through a process of reconciliation, and how the victims also could be assisted with reparations. There is also a move towards setting up a Constitutional Review Commission to really look at the whole issue of the Constitution, putting in place a better constitutional framework for good government that would ensure, for instance, greater independence for the judiciary, putting probably a term limit on the office of the president, etc. There are proposals also to establish a National Human Rights Commission, which would be able to supplement the work of the courts and probably receive and deal with allegations of human rights violations much more quickly than the normal judicial process can handle. These are all elements of a policy which is in the process of being implemented.
How realistic, though, is it to expect things to happen relatively quickly in the country when institutions have been broken for such a long time? The judiciary hasn't been able to function properly for many years.
It will take time. There is a lot of expectation within the population for change and for quick change. Some of it can happen quickly, some of it takes time to put in place. For instance, public service and security sector reform are difficult areas and they take time. There's a question of attitudes. People need to be retrained in the public service for them to understand and to understand the need for respecting the law and the rule of law in the discharge of their duties. Training for law enforcement officers, the police and other security services in the area of human rights, etc. And so change their attitudes, their approaches, and their understanding of the relationship with the public as well. Some of it will take time. As far as the judiciary is concerned, we have engaged in a process of recruitment of Gambian nationals, and it's been fairly successful. Gambian nationals who will take over responsibility for the administration of justice as well.
Can you put a time frame on these sort of changes?
The Truth and Reconciliation Commission is expected to work probably for about 2 years, as well as the Constitutional Review Commission. The commission will be tasked with preparing a new constitution, this is my understanding, which it should deliver after consultation with the country within 2 years. So it may well be that within 2 years we'll have a new constitution in place, Within 2 years, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission would have finished its work and presented a report on the abuses which occurred. And then decisions will be taken on how to proceed with regard to some of them. Some of the matters are already in court. For instance, there are a number of security officials, former security officials, who have been indicted for murder of certain civilians, and they are being prosecuted in the High Court already. And there are a few other cases also which have been filed relating to offenses by security officers. Most of these officers happen to be abroad at the moment. They've left the country. So there needs to be a process of securing their return back through extradition processes, etc. It's a challenging task. Some of it, as I said, can be done right away. Some of it will take time to redress.
Gambia is set to re-enter the Commonwealth at a time when critics of the Commonwealth as an organisation have been particularly hard on the grouping. Why is it so important for your country to re-enter this association of currently 52 countries?
I think the Commonwealth is important because of its values. Its values, respect for human rights, for the rule of law, and for good governance. It's a model for the rest of the world. And so the change in the government in the Gambia is really a return to the values of the Commonwealth. So we want to come back into the Commonwealth, and I'm sure we can get the assistance of the Commonwealth members and organizations in trying to reform our own country to make sure that those values are entrenched much more securely there.
And what do you say to those people who insist that the Commonwealth hasn't adhered to its own core values, particularly in respect of human rights in some countries?
Well, we've had situations where some members of the Commonwealth have been deviating from the values. The Commonwealth has been working, I must say quietly engaging those countries concerned, including the Gambia itself during the bad times, engaging the countries, the governments concerned to encourage them to change their ways. Many of us think that the Commonwealth could probably engage these countries much more forcefully and much more publicly and more openly in order to try to get them to change rather than just quietly, in a quiet fashion.
Of course, the Commonwealth Summit in 2018 is occurring at a time when Britain is embroiled in Brexit. What are the opportunities for Commonwealth countries, do you think?
Well, as far as Brexit itself is concerned, I'm not so sure, but I think the Commonwealth meeting next year should be an opportunity for us to again review our work as an association in the area of governance and human rights. It's, I think, over 2 decades ago that the Commonwealth set up a governmental working group, which I happened to chair at the time, which reviewed the work of the Commonwealth in the area of human rights, and we made certain recommendations as to future directions. That's 2 decades ago. And that report, the report of that group provided some direction for the Secretariat, which they have been following. But now situations have changed, it's 2 decades, and I think we need to go back again and ask ourselves, do we continue or do we need new directions again? Do we need new emphasis? So I think 2018 might be a good opportunity for us to set in process a motion for reviewing the policy and the direction of the Commonwealth in the area of human rights and good governance.
Hassan Jallow, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.